Chapter 2. The Planet Earth and Human Activities. Beauty of the Earth. Arguably, the beauty of nature manifests itself powerfully in some of the physical features of nature, namely tropical forest, seas and oceans, outer sphere, desert and so on. Tropical rainforest is used as an illustration here. Figure 6. Tropical broadleaf evergreen forest, the rainforest's source, the Wikipedia Encyclopedia. Tropical rainforests are rainforests generally found near the equator. They are common in Asia, Africa, South America, Central America, and on many of the Pacific islands. The World Wildlife Fund's biome classification scheme refers to tropical rain forests as tropical wet forest, or tropical moist broadleaf forest, and may also be referred to as lowland equatorial evergreen rain forests. The tropical rainforest is found between L00N and 100S latitudes at elevations below 3,000 feet and consists of three major, disjoint formations. A. Neotropical Amazonia into Central America. B. African Zaire Basin with an outlier in West Africa, also eastern Madagascar, and C. Indo-Malaysian west coast of India, Assam, Southeast Asia, New Guinea and Queensland, Australia. The tropical rainforest is Earth's most complex biome in terms of both structure and species diversity. Species composition and even genera and families are distinct in each. They also differ from species of temperate forests. Species diversity is highest in the extensive neotropical forest, second in the highly fragmented Indo-Malaysian formation, and lowest in Africa. Where 5 to a maximum of 30 species of trees share dominance in the temperate broadleaf deciduous forest, there may be 100 different species in 1 hectare of tropical rainforest. Despite the fact that rainforest covers only 2% of the planet's surface, over half of the Earth's animal, insect species, and flora live there. Within a 4-mile square area of a tropical rainforest, there live over 750 species of trees, 1,500 different kinds of flowering plants, 125 species of mammals, 400 species of birds, 100 reptiles, 60 amphibians, countless insects and 150 species of butterflies. Only L% of these species has ever been studied. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/tropical. Tropical species of both plants and animals often have very restricted distribution areas. In the tropical rainforest, animal life fauna is highly diverse. Common characteristics found among mammals and birds, and reptiles and amphibians, too, include adaptations to an arboreal life, for example, the prehensile tails of New World monkeys, bright colors and sharp patterns, loud vocalizations, and diets heavy on fruits. Tropical rainforest occurs under optimal growing conditions of abundant precipitation and year-round warmth. There is no annual rhythm to the forest, rather each species has evolved its own flowering and fruiting seasons. Sunlight is a major limiting factor. A variety of strategies have been successful in the struggle to reach light or to adapt to the low intensity of light beneath the canopy the forest provides. Tall, broad-leaved evergreen trees are the dominant plants, forming a leafy canopy over the forest floor. Taller trees, called emergents, may rise above the canopy. The upper portion of the canopy often supports a rich flora of epiphytes, including orchids, bromeliads, mosses, and lichens, who live attached to the branches of trees. The undergrowth or understree in a rainforest is often restricted by the lack of sunlight at ground level, and generally consists of shade-tolerant shrubs, herbs, ferns, small trees, and large woody vines which climb into the trees to capture sunlight. The relatively sparse understree vegetation makes it possible for people and other animals to walk through the forest. In deciduous and semi-deciduous forests, or forests where the canopy is disturbed for some reasons, the ground beneath is soon colonized by a dense tangled growth of vines, shrubs and small trees called jungle. The temperature ranges from 50 C to 500 C. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/tropical. There are several common characteristics of tropical rainforest trees. Tropical rainforest species frequently possess one or more of the following attributes not commonly seen in trees of higher latitudes or drier conditions on the same latitude. Many tree species have broad, woody flanges buttresses, at the base of the trunk originally believed to help support the tree. It is now believed that the buttresses channel stem flow and it dissolved nutrients to the roots. Large leaves are common among trees and shrubs of the understree and forest floor layers. Young individuals of trees destined for the canopy and emergent layers may also have large leaves. When they reach the canopy, new leaves will be smaller. The large leaf surface helps intercept light in the sun-dappled lower strata of the forest and are made possible because the lower layers are largely protected from winds which damage large leaves in the canopy. Canopy leaves are usually smaller than found in understree plants or are divided to reduce wind damage. The leaves of rainforest understree trees also often have drip tips which facilitate drainage of precipitation off the leaf to promote transpiration and inhibit the growth of microbes and bryophytes which would damage or smother the leaf. Trees are often well connected in the canopy layer, especially by the growth of woody climbers known as lianas or by plants with epiphytic adaptations, allowing them to grow on top of existing trees in the competition for sunlight. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/tropical. Other characteristics that are more frequent in tropical rainforest tree species than in temperate forests or drier tropical regions include that with a exceptionally thin bark, often only 1 to 2 mm thick. They are usually very smooth, although are sometimes covered with spines or thorns. B. Cauliflory, the development of flowers and fruits directly from the trunk, rather than at the tips of branches, and C. Large fleshy fruits that attract birds, mammals, and even fish as dispersal agents. Human uses of forests. Habitation. Tropical rainforests have historically not supported human populations. Food resources within the forest are extremely dispersed due to the high biological diversity, and what food does exist is largely restricted to the canopy and requires considerable energy to obtain. Rainforest soils are often thin and leached of many minerals, and the heavy rainfall can quickly leach nutrients from rainforest plots cleared for cultivation. Nonetheless, humans have and do exploit rainforests for food and shelter in several parts of the world. Many agriculturalists, particularly within the Amazon and New Guinean rainforests, obtain their food primarily from farm plots cleared from the forest and hunt and forage within the forest to supplement this. Other peoples described as rainforest dwellers are hunter-gatherers who subsist in large part by trading high-value forest products such as hides, feathers, and honey with agricultural people living outside the forest. Other groups of hunter-gatherers have exploited rainforest on a seasonal basis but dwell primarily in adjacent savanna and open forest environments where food is much more abundant. Cultivated foods and spices: coffee, chocolate, bananas, mangoes, papayas, avocados, and sugarcane all originally came from tropical rainforests, and are still mostly grown on plantations in regions that were formerly primary forest. In the mid-80s and 90s, 40 million tons of bananas were consumed worldwide each year, along with 13 million tons of mangoes. Central American coffee exports were worth $3 billion United States dollars in 1970. Much of the genetic variation used in evading the damage caused by new pests is still derived from resistant wild stock. Tropical forests have supplied 250 cultivated kinds of fruit, compared to only 20 for temperate forests. Forests in New Guinea alone contain 251 tree species of edible fruits, of which only 43 had been established as cultivated crops by 1985. The chocolate that comes from the rainforest originates from the cocoa tree, where the pods may carry 50 to 60 seeds. These trees are pollinated by a tiny fly called the midge. Pharmaceutical and biodiversity resource. Tropical rainforests are called the world's largest pharmacy because of the large amount of natural medicines discovered there. For example, rainforests contain the basic ingredients of hormonal contraception methods: cocaine, stimulants, and tranquilizing drugs. Banks, 36. Cur, a paralyzing drug, and quinine, a malaria cure, are also found there. In particular, Amazon rainforests produce about 40% of the world's oxygen. 1 in 4 pharmaceuticals comes from a plant in the tropical rainforests, and 1,400 rainforest plants are believed to offer cures for cancer. Tourism. Currently, one of the largest economic values of tropical rainforests comes in the form of tourism. People travel both nationally and internationally to experience rainforests firsthand. The economic benefits of tourism, Duke, 2007, 4 and 5, are the most promising way in which rainforests may be preserved. Animal products. Rainforests provide numerous animal products including honey, game meat, and associated trophies such as hides and ivory. Ecosystem services. In addition to extractive human uses, rainforests also have non-extractive uses that are frequently summarized as ecosystem services. Rainforests play an important role in maintaining biological diversity, modulating precipitation, infiltration and flooding, increasing scientific knowledge, and in the spiritual well-being of humans. Such ecosystem services are of use to humans without the need for any modification or management of the forest itself. In addition, the tropical rainforests are a critical link in the ecological chains of the Earth's biosphere. Generally, there is a flow of air that comes from the poles of the Earth towards the equator. These winds are filled with moisture, and the intense heat that is located at the equator causes the moisture to rise, cool, and then condense to create rain. This continuous cycle causes it to rain almost 24 hours a day around most of the tropical areas. In some regions there can be more than 15 feet of rain in a year. Nigerian forests include all areas dominated by evergreen or deciduous trees with a canopy cover of greater than 60% and a height exceeding 2 meters, and the leaves of trees there are of broad and needle-like. Nigerian forests were once in the heart of the tropical rainforest belt, but the country has lost about 90% of its forests. The only typical forest left is around the Cross River National Park, established in 1991 by the government in order to protect Nigeria's last large remaining area of rainforest. This forest is particularly important because it is one of the most species-rich in Africa. It is home to huge diversity of plant life and many endangered animal species including gorillas, leopards, chimpanzees, forest elephants and drill monkeys live there. Abbott, 1996. FORMECU, 1995. The forest of southern states of Cross River, Edo, Ogun, Ondo and Oyo states are important for their wood products of sawn wood, plywood, particle board, newsprint, printing and writing paper and other paper boards. There are non-wood forest products, NWFP, which can be defined as forest materials derived from soil mineral, water, fauna and flora resources other than roundwood, sawn wood. The NWFP are classified into non-wood and non-timber products. The non-wood products are derived from wild animals, herbs, leaves, latex, gum, resins, ropes, fruits, seeds, fungi, fodder, forage, gravel, clay, limestone and natural salt. The woody but non-include poles, fuel wood, charcoal, rattan canes, sponge, chew sticks, bamboos and others. The NWFP occur naturally in all the ecological zones in the country, through the mangrove forest and coastal vegetation, freshwater swamp forest, lowland rainforest, montane areas to the savanna ecozones, derived savanna, Guinea savanna, Sudan savanna and Sahel savanna. The numbers, types, population and diversity of species which occur in the ecological zones vary in accordance with dependence on the natural vegetation for food, medicine, shelter, income generation and other socio-cultural activities. Traditional medicine and traditional religion rely on soil minerals, flora and fauna resources of the forest. Osmiobo, 1993. Similarly, the traditional culture, which in this context refers to community activities in the form of ceremonies and festivals, utilizes NWFP. Some of the common ones include skins of antelopes, crocodiles, monitor lizard and photon for drums and other musical instruments, seeds of Cania indica, and Etenda gigas for musical purposes, cola for sacrifice and prayers, cola acuminator, cola nitida and Garcinia cola, palm wine for traditional ceremonies, festivals and relaxation. Other forest products include natural dyes which are used for clothes, body decorations and for masquerades. In some cultures, all participants in cultural festivals must be decorated, Igo and Otu festivals in Otuo and Aruok Edo State. Also, in some other cases, the clothes worn by priests are also decorated. It is from both leaves and bark of plants that the dyes are extracted. In some plants, fruits and seeds are used to extract dyes, Pterocarpes ocin and Haringana madagascariensis. The women who cultivate the plants producing dyes are now planting them in gardens and around homes to avoid their extinction. Other benefits from the forests include the use or production of A. Toxins. Toxins are popular with inland fishermen. They are used as fish poison among small holders who catch for the family. B. Gum tanning. Gum production and tanning are derived from three main savanna species. However, in the rainforest areas, domestic gum is derived from Chaya grandifolia and is used for traditional medicine and other cultural uses. C. Wrapping leaves. Wrapping leaves are used to preserve Cola nitida and Cola acuminata. Others are used to store food items and to sell food items like mwamwa, echo, meat, akara and so on. D. Mat weaving. Mat weaving is a major rural industry in the savannah area where mats commonly used to demarcate homesteads for privacy among family units. Other non-timber products that are woody play a central part in the socio-cultural and economic life of rural Nigerians. They are often used for household utensils, carvings, agricultural tools, chew sticks and musical instruments. The main product is fuelwood. Chew sticks in terms of volume of wood content are the most expensive wood in Nigerian forests. These species are intensively harvested in the rainforest zones of Edo, Ondo, Oyo, Ekiti and Osun states. The common species used as chew sticks and medicine include the roots of Vernonia amygdalans, Sucurinaga virosa, for gaining appetite, Citropus articulata, Elaphia barteri, for rheumatic pains, Fagara tesmani, Fagara macrophylla, for sickle cell anemia and malaria, Xylopia ethiopica aristolochia ringens, for stomach disorders. These species improve the health of the teeth and prevent snake bites. Osmiobo, 1998. Virtually all species of shrubs and trees are used as fuelwood. Fuelwood is collected from cultivated and uncultivated areas in all the ecozones. The main fuelwood species of commercial significance are Anagesis leocarpus, Tamarindus indica, Parkia biglobosa, Diospyros mespiliformes, Prosopis africana, Uterospermum paradoxum, Isobolina doca, Piliostigma reticulata, Balanites aegyptica, Combretum micranthum moringa dolifera. Ceiba pentanda, Ficus sycamyrus, Acacia albida, Analotica, Guiera albida, G. senegalensis, Pterocarpus erinaceus, Acacia senegal, Afzelia africana and so on. Osmiobo, 1999. Local names of the above botanical names courtesy of Professor S. Ogbogu, Vernonia amygdalina, Bitterleaf English, Awuro, Yoruba, Origbu, Igbo, Fagara tesmani, Xanthoxylon, current generic name Arta, Yoruba, Ako, Igbo, Fagara macrophylla, Xanthoxylon, current generic name Arta, Yoruba, Ako, Igbo, Xylopia ethiopica, Guinea pepper, English. Erinjay, Yoruba, Uda, Igbo, Anagesis leocarpus Orinodon, Yoruba, Atara, Igbo. Tamarindus indica, Tamarind, English, Ajagban, Yoruba. Lefaku Ayibo, Igbo. Parkia biglobosa Iru, Yoruba, Agiri Agala, Igbo. Diosirus mespiliformis, Ige, Yoruba, Mmkpo Agwo, Igbo. Prosopis africana Iron, Yoruba. Ugba, Igbo. Isobolina doka doka, Hausa. Pilioshme reticulatum abif, Yoruba, Okpo atu, Igbo. Moringa oleifera ui, Yoruba, Okwe Ayibo, Igbo. Ceiba pentandra Egan, Yoruba, Akpu Ogwu, Igbo. Ficus sycamorus, Bawa, Hausa. Acacia albida, Gawo, Hausa. Acacia nilotica marje, Hausa. Pterocarpus erinaceus apepe, Yoruba, Uchurukpa, Igbo. Acacia senegal, Dakwara, Hausa. Afzelia africana Apa, Yoruba, Akpalata, Igbo. Some human activities and their consequences on environment. Fundamentally, it is the human civilization that has changed some of the crucial relationships among the world's species on the one hand and between those species and their habitats on the other. Therefore, the environment that inhabits all things has become increasingly tenuous, and this in turn has begun to threaten the quality of life, both for human and non-human, on the planet. Primarily, this way of living, so-called civilization, especially in the last 3 centuries, did not give any regard to the original delicate balance that existed among the inhabitants of the planet. This is at the heart of unsustainable development that threatens and undermines the integrity of fundamental life support systems, namely, the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, and the diverse fabric of living things that provides emotional and spiritual sustenance as well. David and Webel, 2002, 462. It must be mentioned, however, that it is not all aspects of human civilization that is negative and stands condemned. Human activities, mainly associated with the burning of fossil fuel, have changed the chemistry of the atmosphere. The global atmospheric concentration of carbon dioxide, CO2, has increased from a pre-industrial value of about 280 ppm, parts per million, to 379 ppm in 2005, while pre-industrial value of methane, CH4, was 715 ppb, parts per billion, has increased to 1774 ppb in 2005. The atmospheric concentration of nitrous oxide, NOx, jumped from pre-industrial value of about 270 ppb to 319 ppb in 2005, Simonis, 2007, 10. As the volume of what are called greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, CO2, carbon monoxide, CO, methane, CH4, nitrous oxide, NOx, and chlorofluorocarbons, CFCs, increases, the temperature close to the Earth's surface rises gradually. CO2 is produced primarily when fossil fuels are burned to provide energy for expanding industrial society and is the guiltiest of the greenhouse gases in respect of the global warming. Whether it is directly related to the increase in greenhouse gases or not, the climate records, for instance in the UK, show that 9 of the 10 hottest years since records began have occurred since 1983, and 5 of those years happened in the 1990s. Radford, 1998, 2. Many of the seas have been seriously degraded in recent decades. McDonough, 1999, 86, and so many oceans. These oceans contain not only most of the planet's water but also a very diverse range of living organisms. About 300,000 marine species have been identified, but it is commonly held by marine scientists that there is at least double that amount of species. It will be tragic to think that much of this marine life may be destroyed long before some of them are even identified. Human activities have led to other manifestations of environmental degradation, creating pollution of various types: waste, toxic, industrial, domestic, solid, acid rain, desertification, deforestation, ozone layer depletion and erosion. Oyeshola, 1995, 13, 1998, 51. Adina, 2001. In the context of environmental degradation in Nigeria caused by the activities of the nationals, in general every state of the federation suffers from one form of environmental problem or the other. Center for Arid Zones Studies in Nigeria affirmed that desertification is by far the most pressing environmental problems in the northern states along the Niger-Republican borders. The same idea was affirmed by Muhammad Alkali, a professor and vice-chancellor of Yobe State University, when he said the fighting of the desert is as critical as the ecological crisis of the Niger Delta, which appears now to be the major agenda of the present government. The desert is already here with us, not even far away from Abuja, the federal capital territory, where the Harmattan dust becomes thicker every year, leaving behind base spots of sand and dunes. Tell, the 1st of October 2007, 28. Desertification is the major all-season environmental malaise plaguing most states in northern Nigeria, where more than 90% of its citizens rely on fuel wood. The activities of herdsmen whose animals graze on the available vegetation compound the problem, leading to forest retreat and a progressively low annual cropping. Critical states in this respect include Kebbi, Zamfara, Katsina, Yobe, Sokoto and Bauchi. Erosion as another environmental problem in Nigeria is found to be severe in Abia, Imo, Anambra, Enugu, Ondo, Edo, Ebonyi, Jigawa, Zamfara, Kebbi, Sokoto and Gombe states. Soil erosion leading to gullies threatens communities. For instance, deep gullies in Kebbi threaten communities in Jeddah, Zuru, Shanga, Yahuri, Argungu, Arewa, Alero, Bagudo and Bernan Kebi. In Orca over time, more than 1,000 persons and over 4,000 families have lost their ancestral lands to the menace of gully erosion in the three towns of Nanka, Equilobia and Newi. In Enugu State, Onitsha-Enugu Expressway at the Enugu North Council area is about splitting into two parts. Tel, 1 October 2007, 31. At Umuchiana community in Aguata Council area, erosion split the Equilobia-Oko road into two last year and over 250 families numbering close to 1,500 became homeless. Tel, 1 October 2007, 31. Flooding, another environmental problem, occurs throughout the country in three main forms. The first is the urban flooding, which mainly affects human livelihood, and it occurs in towns located on flat or low-lying terrain, usually with poor drainage systems. Such towns include Lagos, Maiduguri, Aba, Warri, Benin and Ibadan. Deforestation has become a major environmental problem in Nigeria. This is due to hardwood logging and tremendous population growth being experienced in the country. Construction of developmental projects, their implementation and related activities leading to industries, airports, recreational places, park, mechanized farming, housing estates and so on also contribute to deforestation because they take and occupy space. One of the consequences of the deforestation is that there is an estimated 484 plant species as well as certain wildlife being threatened with extinction. The problem of industrial pollution is enormous. It is a serious problem in Nigeria. For instance, Nigeria has about 5,000 registered industrial facilities and 10,000 small-scale industries operating illegally within residential premises. In places like Kano, Kaduna and Lagos, colored out and heavily metal-laden effluents, especially from the textile, tannery and paints industries, are discharged directly into open drains and water channels, constituting direct dangers to water users and biota downstream. The News, February 12, 2007, 51. Inappropriate agricultural practices, petroleum prospecting with its attendant oil pollution problems and gas flaring are some of the causes of land degradation in Nigeria. Furthermore, the typical Nigerian solid waste includes paper, food remnants, metal scraps, tins, cans, rubber containers, plastics, cellophane bags, worn-out tires and tubes. About 5,000 of the 7,000 metric tons of waste daily generated by Lagosians go into its dumps at Ajota, which has become the biggest open dump in Lagos. The place harbors flies, fleas, mosquitoes, rats and other vectors that could cause several diseases such as Lassa fever, malaria, filariasis and yellow fever. Industrial waste is part of the residue of all manufacturing industries in Nigeria. The wastes include residues of power stations, burning coal, oil, gas, domestic wastes and unwanted byproducts of industries in urban centers. Disposal of domestic and industrial wastes is a problem in Nigeria. Disposing of industrial waste is leading, in some cases, to nightmare menacing our physical environment. Some of the industrial wastes are often dumped on the ground, thrown into the stream, lakes or disposed of in a deep hole in the ground. The ultimate sufferer of these methods of disposal is the physical environment. The most viable current practice for handling industrial waste is converting such wastes into useful products. Certain wastes such as metals, glass, plastics and paper can be recycled into industrial raw materials. It has been demonstrated in many cases that medium-scale steel industry can be sourced from metal scraps. Paper converter plants such as the one operating at Erin Isle, Kwara State, are common establishments. It has to be acknowledged, however, that there are many non-convertible deadly industrial residues which required careful and expert handling. This is necessary because lead intake, for instance, can lead to abortion, infant mortality, malformation of fetus, genetic mutilation, retarded growth, intoxication, depression of respiration and chromosomal aberrations. Tel, October 1, 2007, 25. In the area of extractive industry, human activities have degraded the environment. According to United Nations Environment Programme (UNEP), blowouts, is oil industry terminology for a situation in which control of oil well is lost during drilling or operation. More frequent during drilling, blowouts lead to the release of hydrocarbons, crude oil, produced water and associated gas, into the environment. Often, such mixture will catch fire and burn until such times the well is brought back under control. Blowouts could be caused by pressure, corrosion and illegal tapping, leading to oil spills and fires. Such fire or spill can take months before it could be brought under control. In 1975, Shell BP leaked 600,000 barrels of crude oil into the seas of Forsado's terminal, and in 1980, 200,000 barrels of crude oil were spilled as a result of Texaco oil well blowout. Between 1997 and 1998, more than 900,000 barrels crude oil were spilled as a result of rupturing Ilis Skravos terminal of Delta State Ogboy, in Perigbayi Al. 2005. On January 16, 2012, there was a blowout at Chevron's Funiwa field, 10 kilometers offshore. This brought about steaming temperatures, acidification of the waters and air miles around the natural gas rig, thus causing a great damage of marine life. Communities affected by the blowout are Kaluama I and II, Sangana, Foropa, Bisangbene, Ezatu, and others, all in Bielsa state. Equipment failure is another oil spillage factor which could result from poorly maintained equipment used in oil exploration and transportation. In May and December 2000, pressure surge valve of Exxon Mobil and SPDC opened due to equipment failure, causing Kwaibo terminal tank farm spill and Umadike 2 spill in Ohaji Egbena local government in Imo state. Abandoned oil facility in the Niger Delta is another case of environmental pollution in the area. In Agonaland, for example, some containers are left lying around since SPIX were forced out of the area some years ago. Where such containers are not empty, there are no indications of the contents. Tampering with such facility may lead to fire outbreak. From the environmental point of view, UNEP notes the corrosion of such metallic objects leads to ground contamination by heavy metals. Artisanal refining means local and crude way of refining petroleum products. This involves the use of metal drums to boil crude oil whose fumes are collected in tanks through pipes welded together. This is common in the Niger Delta region, where distilleries are heated on open fire, throwing dark plumes of smokes into the air and increasing the risk of fire outbreak. Also, soil where such practice took place would suffer contamination from hydrocarbons. Sabotage is a deliberate nefarious human activity on oil pipeline, either for the purpose of making quick money or willfully making oil companies suffer loss. According to Ikperukpo, 1986, cited in ECPO, 2010, sabotage as an oil spillage factor accounts for 3% of the total oil spills worldwide and about 33% of oil spills in Nigeria. For instance, in August 2001, several kilometers of the Trans pipeline were excavated and cut in sizable lengths for onward transportation to buyers. This act spilled oil at B. Dur and K. Dur communities in Gakana local government area of Rivers State. Dredging is the excavation of sediments and disposing of them at a different location. Material is dug or gathered from the bottoms of rivers, lakes, harbors and the open sea via a number of methods, such as a giant scoop or high-pressure suction. It is mainly used to either maintain the depth of ports or create new shipping channels. Large vessels require water of a certain depth to access these routes, so dredging is used to ensure they do not run aground. Sometimes the sediment from dredging is used to re-nourish onshore areas, such as coastal areas subject to erosion. The debris collected is usually a mixture of sand, mud and rock. It has, however, been found out that dredging is carried out to weed out the contamination present in the soil. The effect of biodiversity impacts of contaminated dredging deposit are that the dredging of contaminated material will cause the harmful particles to regroup and spread to a larger area in the water bodies. Short-term increases in the levy of suspended element can give rise to changes in the water quality which can affect marine flora and fauna, both favorably and unfavorably, such as increased turbidity and the possible release of organic matter, nutrient and/or contaminant depending on environment impact of maintenance dredging. Dredging has been found to be controversial because the marine environments are quite complex. Removing large parts of the seabed and dumping it elsewhere can have a major impact on the ecosystem, particularly sensitive areas such as coral reefs and fish nurseries. Sediment can smother sea grasses, which are the key food source of dugongs and sea turtles, and damage corals, wetland functions, especially through disturbances to vegetation and soils. Wildlife that is dependent on wetlands can also be negatively impacted through loss of habitats. Permanent loss of wetlands will result when those lands are replaced with fill. The federal government requires dredging companies to obtain a permit to dump sediment, stating that fragile areas need high level of protection and/or management. Despite the regulatory framework around dredging, environmentalists claim oversight has been lax, causing damage to marine creatures. It has been suggested that dredging be banned completely, blaming it for a rushed, botched process which causes sediment spill across the ecosystem, causing fish and crabs to develop lesions and die, and for releasing toxic chemicals, increasing water turbidity and littering harmful metals throughout the food chain. Concerned over environmental sustainability and the risks posed by dredging activities to the environment as well as human life, both in the immediate and long-term equation with regards to private commercialized dredging of the waterways, the Nigerian Inland Waterways Authority, NIWA, had to read out the Riot Act, titled, Guidelines for Dredging Operations in Lagos State. To operators of dredging businesses in Lagos State at the stakeholder of the sector meeting in April 2016. The rules require that the Environmental Impact Assessment (EIA) and bathymetric sand search report must be conducted before permits can be issued, while dredging and floating equipment must have valid annual survey and operational permits from NIWA, Guardian, Lagos, the 18th of April 2016. Gas flaring is the burning of natural gas that is associated with crude oil when it is pumped up from the ground. In petroleum-producing areas where insufficient investment was made in infrastructure to utilize natural gas, flaring is employed to dispose of this associated gas. Gas flaring in oil rigs and wells contributes significantly to greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Nigeria flares the second largest amount of natural gas in the world, after Russia, which accounts for 10% of the total amount of gas flared globally. Gas flaring facilities are often located close to local communities and typically lack adequate protection for villagers who regularly get exposed to the heat of the flare in the daily activities. Flares in many areas are continuous for 24 hours a day. The problem of gas flaring and the air pollutants emitting therefrom, such as persisted, when gas is flared, the combustion is often incomplete, leading to formulation of large amount of soot and black carbon that are deposited on nearby land, buildings and properties, and which are inhaled by local residents. The perpetual and continuous activities of gas flaring exposes the people of the area to the continual pollutant emitting of nitrogen oxides, sulfur oxides, carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, hydrocarbons and photochemical oxidants, with the noise level for unprotected ears well within the threshold of pain 80 to 90 dBA. Okorodudu Fabara, 1998, 480. The combination of noise, odor, heat, continuous night lighting and black smoke no doubt creates a threat and considerable emotional distress, compounded by the uncertainty about the possible health impact of the hazardous situation. Gas flaring brings about ecosystem heat stress and acid rain. Acid rain in turn induces the destruction of freshwater fishes and forests. Adeyanju, 2004. Observing the growing numbers of species pushed to extinction, growing numbers of people feel a sense of foreboding for the human future. In the looming threats to clean air, clean water, the integrity of the Earth's atmosphere, and in an era of diminishing resources, people are recognizing threats to their own well-being that are as real as any military threat emanating from an armed opponent. Ecological thinkers maintain, as well, that human beings have an obligation to be something other than a generalized predatory and destructive species. Rather, they must exercise wise stewardship over the planet's wild things and wild laces, not just for our own benefit but also as a moral and ethical imperative. Barish and Webel, 2002, 462. Many environmentalists see the connection between despoiled, depleted and polluted lands and human misery. It is becoming increasingly clear that we cannot fully make peace until we make peace with our planetary environment. Barish and Webel, 2002, 463. Furthermore, Barish and Webel observed that the tragedy of the global commons has global dimensions. For instance, the Scandinavian forests and lakes suffer from acid rain because of the effluents of Eastern European sources mainly, while Britain gets the economic benefit. Japan and Norway periodically defy international outcry while hunting the world's great whales to the verge of extinction. Brazil seeks to benefit economically from the Amazon rainforest, even though such benefit requires that it be destroyed, to the ultimate detriment of everyone. Barish and Webel, 2002, 464. Many environmental experts fear that we cannot continue on the present course much longer without causing irreversible damage. There could well be key thresholds in the planetary environment that, once crossed, may permanently impair the Earth's ability to meet our needs in the future. If the atmospheric load of greenhouse gases becomes too high, the ozone layer too sparse, soils too eroded, air and water pollution too severe, or some combination of these and other factors, if forest clearing and desertification go too far, then at some point, the planet may simply become incapable of nurturing life, regardless of our attempts to remedy things. Thus, it could be that the current generation has the enormous responsibility of determining the habitability of the planet, and not just for ourselves but also for myriad other species as well. In this regard, time is not on our side, as Barish and Webel observed. Soil, once eroded away, can take centuries to be replenished. Certain forms of contamination, plastics, nuclear waste, long-lived pesticides, will probably be around longer than human history has thus far endured. The atmosphere, once warmed, may be impossible to cool, and species, once extinct, cannot be recreated. Barish and Webel, 2002, 477. Environmental degradation, on the long run, translates directly not only into a less interesting and less beautiful planet, one deprived of wildlife, for example, or scenic values, but it also means thirst, hunger, poverty, sickness and misery for unacceptable number of humanity. Degradation of the planet is one of the negative aspects of the issues that are related to the environment. Some of the manifestations of the degradation, like deforestation, desertification, pollution, erosion and emissions arising from aviation, WBGU, 2004, are caused by human beings, while some others are natural in origin. Earthquake, landslides, hurricanes, some flood and fire belong to the latter category of sources of environmental degradation. Their consequences are devastating and life-threatening. Oyeshola, 1995, 17 ff. 1998, 9 and 52 feet. At the worst scenario, they may lead to total collapse of ecosystem. Complex relationship of negative human activities and sustainable development. In all, negative human activities and their consequences on the environment are intricately connected. This is because they manifest in unsustainable development practices that endanger the very base upon which the human and non-human existence depends. Therefore, it must be recognized that the issue of unsustainable development showing in negative human activities that are affecting the environment is big and complex in its manifestations. It is political because it involves the making of policy decisions about the best way to achieve certain objectives that affect the present citizenry and future generations. Especially in the North, the complexity manifests further, for instance where all political parties are struggling with their manifestos and constituencies to be seen as being green, that is, addressing environmental landscape, even if their actions often rarely match their rhetoric. In the context of environmental law, a fast-developing new area of international law, Shaw, 2002, 37, for instance, compensation for, restoration of and regulations on contaminated land require a detailed and complicated set of rules. New environmental quality standards, guidance documents, framework strategies and case law are being incorporated into pre-existing texts, Sunken al., 2002, 4. In particular, there is need to examine the ways in which law and constitutions can, give effect to collectively held values on the environment and differentiate them from genuinely held individual preferences. Environmental issue in the context of unsustainable development is equally big in terms of environmental law and is also controversial but interesting because it deals with questions of changing values and therefore priorities. It involves the key questions of how does the law interact with the process of change? How does collective of public values like the need to protect human health, the need to use resources wisely or the need to provide food, warmth and accommodation not raise much debate? In addition, how does what should be forfeited today in order to do justice to future generations be assessed? Some other areas that call for investigation include the extent to which environmental problems can be solved by technological advances which can contribute to rather than hinder economic growth. Such issues include the management of biodiversity, disaster prediction and management. Lastly, there is an increasing recognition that more work needs to be done to assess the adequacy of the implementation and enforcement of environmental laws. At the international level, this lack of an effective remedy for any breaches or failure to implement has long been a cause for concern. Similarly, many regional, national and local environmental directives are yet to be implemented. In particular, a number of cases in relation to the need for environmental impact assessment and statutory nuisances are being heard. The effect of human activities on the environment is big and complex because they have impacted on sustainable development. Brundtland Report, Our Common Future, 1987, and Precautionary Principle, Stockholm and Rio Conferences of 1972 and 1992 respectively. There is need for them to be recognized and incorporated into official policy documents of nation-states. Nigeria has demonstrated this tendency especially in the inclusion of number 20 in its 1999 constitutions, in the establishment of Ministry of Environment and Urban Development and formulation of environmental, science and technology policies. Similarly, issues associated with the risks of deliberate planting of genetically modified seeds, use of mobile phones and their masks, the emission of dioxins from waste incinerators are apparent and constitute scares to communities and societies. McDonough, 1999. The increasing complexity of the issues and the intensity of feeling on all sides of the debate on the environment underline the need for deliberate processes which can resolve the apparently irresolvable, taking into account precautionary principle. Some human activities on the environment are gradually leading to unsustainable development and degradation, calling for solutions. Global warming, the destruction of the ozone layer, acid rain, deforestation and toxic waste are all global issues which require an appropriately global response. In terms of the range of problems and issues it encompasses, such as air, water, noise pollution, waste management, pesticides, protection of the environment, conservation of wildlife and so on, the issues are big and complex. They are big also in terms of the knowledge and skills required to understand even any single and particular issue. Furthermore, consequences of human activities have terrific implications, and so they are big in terms of the increasing complexity of environmental risks which create technological and scientific demands on regulators and agencies, the growth in emphasis on uniform and integrated planning of solutions to environmental problems, the increase in institutional coherence and the impact of regional and international regimes. Environmental issue in the context of unsustainable development is big in terms of the shifting emphasis away from the more traditional reactive methods of solving environmental problems towards the prevention of harms. It is big in terms of the importance being given to the market in controlling environmental problems, for example, in the proliferation of schemes for charging for environmentally harmful activities, environmental auditing, in the increasingly frequent reference to the polluter pays principles and reforms of the taxation system in many countries to increase incentives which will reduce environmental damage. It is big in terms of the process already begun in integrating environmental considerations into a limited number of other policy sectors. It is big in terms of linkages already established among environmental issues through the provision of information about the environment. At a policy level, responsible linking access to environmental information with other aspects of environmental policy can be seen in the linkages between access to information and shared responsibility with public participation and access to justice of stakeholders in environmental matters, cf. Principles of Stockholm, Rio and COP11 of Johannesburg, 2012. Unsustainable human activities are a part of human development on the planet, and it is big and complex because human intervention in the natural environment in the name of development is already jeopardizing natural life support systems, especially those utilized by the poor in many regions of the world. Unless countermeasures are adopted, environmental changes will have an even more life-threatening impact on the planet in future. Ironically, those who are responsible for global and transboundary environmental problems, such as climate change, are predominantly based in the industrialized countries of the North, while the vast majority of those affected live in the developing countries of the South. And unfortunately, it is the poor groups who are especially vulnerable to environmental changes, as these people are more exposed to risks which threaten their survival, such as disease, hunger, harvest losses, disasters and so on, and have very few coping and adaptive capacities. Summary for policy makers, WBGU, 2004, 1. Conclusively, the above issues in their interconnectedness establish the fact that unsustainable development is the global problem and needs to be addressed urgently, both in its policy and politics, if the Earth as given will remain a blessing to humanity. Thank you for reading through Chapter 2 of my book, Sustainable Development, Issues and Challenges for Nigeria. Chapter 3 is already available on this channel, Environmental Tonic.